Naila, why is English language important to learn?
This is because English language is an international language and is widely followed and understood by people across the world.
I want to learn this language.
To learn every language, there are some skills to develop. Follow this class to learn these skills.
Viewers of MTA Africa, you are once again welcome to our program, A Simplified Guide to English Language. This is a program that seeks to bring English language in a simple way to our viewers. Students within the JHS level and those of us in the secondary school level are the main targets who should be able to follow these lessons, get to learn the basic rules concerning the English language. This program presents English in the various areas that we do study at school. That is grammar, literature, essay writing, the oral aspect as well. We have been treating a main subject, a main topic. We have been treating a main topic under the grammar area. And the main topic that we have been looking at is relationship between clauses. We have discussed other aspects of this topic. We have looked at the structure of a sentence. We've also discussed coordination. And then we have been discussing subordination. If you have missed the previous lessons, kindly follow the direction under your screen to view the various programs under this topic that you have missed. In today's discussion, we hope to look at Subordinator 2. We discussed Subordinator 1 in our previous lesson, just the ended lesson last week. Today we are going to build under that. In our discussion last week, we looked at simple subordinators and complex subordinators. Well, we did mention in that lesson that we do have another category of subordinators known as correlative subordinators. So today's discussion is going to concentrate on that. And then we would have been gradually bringing the discussion under relationship between clauses to an end. Now, let's go into the lesson. The objectives for the lesson include: 1. Identify correlative subordinator in text. If it happens we have a statement we are reading, we should be able to identify our correlative subordinator, if at all there is one. And then we should also be able to use correlative subordinator correctly in sentences. Now let's go into the lesson. Correlative subordinators. These subordinators are derived from adverbs with a noun or verb being part. So let's take note. In our simple subordinators, we said they are made of just one word. In complex subordinators, we said they are made of two words. Now, in correlative subordinators, what we are saying is that these are subordinators that are derived from adverbs. So, the original words for these subordinators are adverbs. But then, these adverbs are turned into subordinators. And you would have a noun or a verb being part of this derived adverb that are used as subordinators. And we are saying that they are usually made of more than one expression or word. So we do have this subordinate made of more than one expression or one word with that as part of it. So you always have that being part of the expression that makes up correlative subordinators. As we have granted that, provided that, in spite of the fact that, considering that, and others. Now, when we take granted that, we have granted being a verb, right? Provided being a verb, right? Then in spite of the fact that, then we have the fact being a noun, right? Considering that, then we have considering being a verb, right? Now let's go further. We said this group of subordinators are divided into 3 classes. So here, the correlative subordinators, you can subdivide them into 3 classes. And what are these classes? We have them as 1, A, those derived from verbs. So we have these correlative subordinators that are gotten from verbs. So remember, we said they are subordinators that are derived from adverbs with a noun or a verb being part of it. So the first category is where we have the subordinator coming from a verb. Now, the verb could either be from a present or past form of a verb, as we have in provided that, which is past form of a verb, seeing that, which is in the present form, granted that, past form, suppose that, present form, considering that, present form. Remember, we are not looking at the subcategories of the 2 main types of tenses. So seeing that is a present form of verb. But of course, you can say it is in a present progressive form. We are not looking at those subgrouping. We are just looking at the main 2 tenses. So that's why we say it is either from the present or past form of a verb. So this group is made of verbs either coming from the present or the past form, with that being part of it. We realize that they are made of, most of them are made of 2 words or 2 expressions. Then we have the B, those with a noun. So we have another group of correlative subordinators that has a noun being part of that subordinator. So we have, in spite of the fact that, so we have the noun there, the fact. Then we have in the event that, so we have the noun, the event. Then we have to the extent that, so we have the noun, the extent. So this is also another class of correlative subordinators. Then we have C, the third class, those from the class of adverbials. So you realize that all these 3 categories are derived words that we derive them from other word classes within the English language. So the third one is made of words coming from adverbs. So they are adverbials. So we have as long as far as, much as soon as, for as much as, in as much as. Let's take a particular interest in the last one, in as much as. In as much as comes this way. In is not separated from as, and as is also not separated from much. It is one word. Even though pronounced as 3 separate words, in as much is written as one word. Let's take a very close look at it, and always make sure that anytime we are writing, we write it as one word. In as much. In as much. One word, not separate words. Unlike the others, like as long as, separate words, as far as, separate words, much as, separate words, as soon as, separate words, for as much as, separate words. In as much, one word. Good. So in as much as, the last as is separated from in as much. Good. So these are the 3 categories of correlative subordinators that we have. We are going to look at how each one category we are going to look at how each category is used in sentences. So you try most of them on your own. So we have those derived from verbs, either from a present or past form of verb. So we have the one as provided that, seeing that, granted that, suppose that, considering that, in the following sentences. So let's see the first sentence. I'll deliver the goods provided that you give me the specifications. So we have provided that you give me the specifications. Being a clause that depends on I will deliver the goods. Now this is a condition. This is expressing a condition. I am in a position to deliver the goods to you. If I am able to get the required specifications from you. So this is what we are getting from the sentence. This is a message we are getting from the sentence. So we have provided that linking, being a subordinator, linking these two statements. I will deliver the goods. You give me the specification. So provided that you give me the specifications depends on I will deliver the goods for a complete meaning. Then we have seen that he had nothing to stand on. He quickly abandoned his argument. In this case, we have seen that being first part of the statement, the clause, he has nothing to stand on. Then we have he quickly abandoned his argument. So we have he has nothing, seeing that he has nothing to stand on, being a subordinate clause, depending on he quickly abandoned his argument to give us a complete meaning. Now let's find out whether we could bring he quickly abandoned his argument before the first clause and see whether it makes sense. So let's see. Consider a sentence. That sentence, reposition the two clauses, making the first clause come before the second clause. And let's see whether it still would give us the same message. He quickly abandoned his argument, seeing that he had nothing to stand on. Yes, the message is still clear. Now let's do the same with the first one. We bring the first clause before the second one. You give me the specification, I will deliver the, provided that you give me the specifications, I will deliver the goods. It still makes sense, right? Good. So we'll realize that in this sense, when we are bringing the dependent clause before the main clause, our subordinator will have to be placed at the beginning of our clause. And remember again, we are using them as subordinators, and therefore you will see that just after the subordinator, we have the subject of our dependent clause coming. You, in the first sentence, coming just after provided that. Then we have he, the subject of the clause, coming just after seeing that. In sentence 3, we are using suppose that. So we have suppose that we sack him. What are the legal consequences? So in a situation, at the condition where we happen to sack the person, what are the legal consequences? So what is the outcome of our action? We are trying to find out here. So here we have suppose that we sack him, depending on what are the legal consequences for a complete meaning. Now let's see again whether we can bring the first clause, that's a dependent clause, after our main clause. And doing that, the same positioning of our subordinator will appear. So what are the legal consequences? Suppose that we sack him. And that makes sense, right? the same message clear there. Good. Now we have in sentence 4. Here we are using considering that. They would agree, considering that they haven't sent anyone so far. So we have considering that they haven't sent anyone so far, depending on they would agree. Now, what we are trying to say that their action of not sending anyone implies that they will agree to something that was proposed to them. That's the message in that sentence. But let's now see whether again we can reposition the clauses. Let's see whether we can reposition the two clauses. They would agree, and considering that they haven't sent anyone so far. If we are to bring the second clause first, the dependent clause first, before the main clause, then we would have it as, considering that they haven't sent anyone so far, they would agree with us, right? Yes. Take note. When we bring the dependent clause, the subordinate clause, before the main clause, we necessarily will have a punctuation mark, comma, coming in between. But when it is the other way around, we necessarily do not need the comma there. So in sentence 1, I will deliver the goods provided that you give me the specifications. We didn't see the comma coming there, because our main clause came first before our subordinate clause. In the same way, in sentence 4, they would agree considering that they haven't sent anyone so far. We also do not have the comma coming in between the two clauses, because our main clause comes before the subordinate clause. But in sentence 2 and 3, we have a comma separating the two clauses, because our subordinate clause was placed before our main clause. Now we have sentence 5. I'll fulfill all your needs, granted that I'm voted into power. I'll fulfill all your needs, granted that I'm voted into power. So here we have granted that I'm voted into power being our subordinate clause, depending on I'll fulfill all your needs to give us the complete message. So in all the 5 sentences, we have our correlative conjunctions, and that has been there throughout. Of course, that is there for a specific kind of rule, which is not the concentration of this lesson. In our next discussion under grammar, we may go into details in discovering why that is being used. But before that comes up, you can continue to study on it, and therefore makes the discussion and learning very interesting. Now let's move on. The B group, where we have a correlative subordinator with a noun being part of it, in spite of the fact that, in the event that, to the extent that, if you do not know the nouns in these subordinators, the nouns are the fact, in spite of the fact that the event is a noun, in the event that the extent is a noun, in to the extent that. So let's see how we can use them in sentences. Try coming up with your own sentences. Do not depend on only what I provide here. It is your responsibility to come up with your own sentences. So have, in spite of the fact, we should be in spite of the fact that he's been hospitalized just a day ago. He came to work. So here we have concession there. A situation of unexpectancy, something we do not expect to happen. Normally it is going to be expected that if someone is just discharged from the hospital, the person should at least take a day's rest. But in this case, the person didn't. From hospital the following day, the person reported to work. That wasn't expected. So in spite of the fact that he's been hospitalized just a day ago, he came to work. Having our main clause, he came to work, coming after our subordinate clause. And in this case, our subordinator is placed at the beginning of the sentence. We have provided the details to the extent that was requested of us. Sentence 2. We have provided the details to the extent that was requested of us. So the level to which the message was provided is within the request. The degree at which the message was provided is within the request. Here we are using to the extent that as a subordinator, and therefore we realize just after it, our subject for that clause was requested of us is there. That's an implied subject. And what is that implied subject there? We provided details. We provided the details to the extent that was requested of us. What was requested of you? The details. Then in sentence 3, we have, keep this amount in the event that your father doesn't return on time. Keep this amount in the event that your father doesn't return on time. So here is a condition. A subordinator, a correlative subordinator expressing some kind of condition. So the money is there. In a case of a situation where your father doesn't return on time to support you, so you use the money. But if your father reports on time or returns on time, of course, you aren't expected to use the money. So keep this amount in the event that your father doesn't return on time. So we have our subordinate clause to be in the event that your father doesn't return on time. In the main clause being keep this amount. Is it possible to place the subordinate clause before the main clause? Yes, it is possible. Let's try. In the event that your father doesn't return on time, keep this amount. Does it give us the same message? In the event that your father doesn't return on time, keep this amount. The message is not as the same as keep this amount in the event that your father doesn't return on time. If the keep this amount in the event that your father doesn't return on time is a condition for which the money is given to you. The money is given to you to be spent on the condition that your father doesn't return on time. But if we place the subordinate clause before the main clause, which we read as, in the event that your father doesn't return on time, keep this amount. It is as though it is certain, and it is as though your father certainly hasn't returned on time. And therefore, you are to keep this amount. So the message in the two aren't the same. Now let's see our category 3, the C. That's correlative subordinators, that those that come from the class of adverbials, as in as long as far as soon as, for as much as, and then in as much as. So we have sentence 1, go wherever you wish as long as you don't get hurt. Condition, roam as long as you want, but the condition that you should not get hurt. So go wherever you wish as long as you don't get hurt. So we have as long as you don't get hurt, depending on go wherever you wish. That is a condition given to you. As long as you don't get hurt, go wherever you wish. I can't give you the amount as much as I sympathize with you. Here, concession. It's expected that when you sympathize with someone, you do the person's request. Here, the person sympathizes with you, all right, but it's not prepared. Either it's not in a position to give you the amount, or it's not ready to give it to you for certain reasons. So I can't give you the amount much as I sympathize with you. So much as I sympathize with you depends on I can give you the amount for a complete meaning. Can it come before the main clause? Let's try. Much as I sympathize with you, then you have to have your comma. I can't give you the amount. It still gives us the same message. 3. You cannot go inside as far as you are not in your uniform. So here, the condition for you to go inside is for you to be in your uniform. Otherwise, no way for you inside. So we have as far as you are not in your uniform, depending on you cannot go inside for a complete meaning. So a subordinator, again, we realize that in the 3 sentences so far, just after our subordinator, we have the subject for the next clause. You in the first sentence, I in the second sentence, and then you again in the third sentence. Can you bring the subordinate clause before the main clause? As far as you are not in your uniform, you cannot go inside. Yes, it makes sense, right? Then sentence 4. As soon as you see him, notify the police. Tell next time. Immediately you see him, notify the police. So immediately, right? In our simple subordinator. So it could be used there. Immediately you see the police, notify. Immediately you see him, notify the police. So here, as we've noticed so far, under our correlative subordinators and complex subordinators, anytime you place your subordinate clause before your main clause, you always have to use comma in separating the 2 statements, the 2 clauses. Then sentence 5. We are trying to bring the main clause before our subordinate clause. Notify the police as soon as you see him. Notify the police as soon as you see him. So immediately you see him, notify the police. Notify the police immediately you see him. They have no need to grieve inasmuch as they adhere to the rules. The condition is that if you adhere to the rules, there's nothing to grieve at all. So inasmuch as they adhere to the rules, they have no need to grieve, no need to worry. Right? So let's see if we could bring our subordinate clause in as much as they adhere to the rules before the main clause. They have no need to grieve. Can we put it that way? Let's see and find out whether the message will change or not. In as much as they adhere to the rules, they have no need to grieve. It makes sense. Good. This is where time will permit us to be with you. Hoping to meet you again next time. In this discussion, we looked at correlative subordinators. We've already looked at simple subordinators and complex subordinators. We are gradually bringing an end to our discussions and the relationship between clauses. In our next lesson, we'll be interested in how to link, to connect messages between clauses without actually bringing a coordinator or a subordinator. We've studied some passage, a situation where we had something like that. Until then, next week, the same channel, we say bye-bye and enjoy the rest of the week.